Mom's been in an accident and taken to the hospital. Please, take me there. I begged my husband, tears streaming down my face. I had just received a call that my mother was in critical condition, unconscious after a traffic accident. But when I told my husband, he said, "I can't, I'm off on a trip with my colleague," and rejected my pleas. Even as I persisted, he seemed to mock me with a sneer. To me, the trip is more important. Attending someone's bedside is a waste of time. I'm definitely not going. My name is Erica, I'm 29. I married Ken, a year my senior, 2 years ago, and we both work full-time. We met at college. There were many classmates, so it was hard to talk to everyone, but we got closer after sitting next to each other at a party one day. We also discovered we both were only children raised by single mothers after losing our fathers early, which brought us closer quickly. We started going out often, and it naturally led to a relationship. As we both settled into our jobs after graduating from college, Ken proposed. We're both satisfied with our careers, so we haven't thought about children yet. We have talked about buying a house when the time comes. We're currently renting a place, and both of our homes are nearby. Since both of our fathers passed away, our mothers live alone. My mother, Sally, and my mother-in-law, Mary, get along very well. They got along because they were close in age and had raised their children on their own without remarrying. They became friends, often having coffee and traveling together. I was surprised because I never expected them to get so close, but it's great seeing them happy as they seem to have a lot of fun together. Mary treats me well too. However, Ken seems to dislike that Mary prioritizes my mother over him. He has a strong attachment to his mother. Before marriage, I knew he cherished his mother from his behavior. I was also brought up in a single-parent household, so I can understand his feelings. After getting married and starting living together, I saw his true nature. Once, when my mother sent a picture of her having lunch with Mary. The message said, "I'm having lunch with Mary now," and a picture of the two of them smiling was attached, and I remember naturally smiling as well. "Hey, Ken, it looks like your moms are having lunch right now." "Look, they sent me a photo," I said, and showed the image to Ken, who was just at home, but as soon as he saw it, he was in a good mood. It got so bad that I clicked my tongue. "Is this some kind of spite? What did you say?" I didn't know he disliked my mother then. It was true that Ken often didn't talk much in front of his mother, but I thought that was because he was nervous because he had only been married for a short time. I never imagined that he would shun my mother just because she was on good terms with his own mother. Because of that person, my mother has been turning down my invitations to dinner lately. I've been telling her that she has plans with Sally. Don't you know that your mother should be a little more reserved? I had no idea that Ken was thinking such a thing, and I was shocked to hear him say something bad about my mother. My mother-in-law apparently realized early on that Ken hated my mother. Mary realized Ken's feelings early and scolded him during dinner when he was being sarcastic to my mother. "Ken, what's this attitude towards Sally? Stop it." "What's this? Mom always supports this person. You've always said that I'm your precious son. It's funny how you prioritize someone you've recently become friends with over your own son." Ken retorted, saying, "I'm sure not, but to be honest, I couldn't help but think that his obsession with his mother-in-law was abnormal." Later, Mary apologized to me and my mother when Ken wasn't around. "I might have spoiled him too much. I'm sorry." "Mary, there's no need to be worried. I don't either. Ken really loves you." My mother, calm by nature, so she doesn't usually get angry at people. This time as well, she pretended to understand Ken without blaming him, but I quickly realized that she was actually hurt in her heart. Ken's attitude worsened, criticizing my mother every chance he got. He has never openly attacked his mother because his stepmother protects her. However, whenever my mother and mother-in-law seemed to be getting along well, she complained to me, and eventually started saying bad things about my mother on a daily basis. Early in our second year of marriage, we had a huge fight. After the argument, the problem was never resolved, and since then, our relationship became strained, and we spoke less. Lately, Ken's been coming home late and going out alone on weekends. When I asked, he said it's just work and needs to work more time, but something felt off. Even when he said that, I wasn't very convinced and couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort. Then, one Sunday, when we were both off, Ken was packing for something. Apparently, there is no day off work today. As I was about to ask Ken why he was packing, a call came through on my smartphone. An unknown number displayed on the screen, and with curiosity, I answered only to find out it was the police on the line. They confirmed I was Sally's daughter and then dropped the bombshell. Your mother has been in a traffic accident. My mind went blank. My mom! They told me she had been taken to the hospital in critical condition, unconscious. After getting the hospital's name, my shaking hands managed to end the call. Tears flooded as I struggled to think, but knew I needed to get to the hospital. Without a driver's license, I pleaded with Ken to take me. Ken, it's awful. Mom's been in an accident. She's at the hospital. Please, we need to go now. But Ken just turned a disgusted face towards me. Huh? I've got a trip with my colleague now. I'll miss the gathering time. Deal with it yourself, he firmly refused. A trip? I had no idea it was today. I realized why he was packing, but he hadn't informed me at all. He then floored me by saying the trip was for 2 weeks. You can't be serious. Mom might. Quiet down, the trip is more important to me. Besides, your mom's just an unrelated old woman to me. Visiting her would be a waste of time. I'm not going. Ken mocked me with his cruel words. Get away, I'm busy, and I got a plane to catch, he said, pushing past me, humming as he packed his clothes into his suitcase. Furious, I yelled, "You're the worst. Just do whatever you want," and stormed out to take a taxi to the hospital. Ken left for his trip as planned. He had no idea of the crisis unfolding around me during the trip. I tried calling him repeatedly to no avail, and the 2 weeks passed without any contact. 2 weeks later, Ken came home in high spirits. I greeted him with a cold stare. I have to go give my mom a souvenir now. I wonder if she's doing well. He cheerfully talked about visiting his mom with souvenirs, but I silently agreed to go with him to his mother's house. On the way, he joyfully talked about the gifts he bought. Not a word about my mom's accident. When they arrived at my in-laws' house, Ken stopped them as they were about to open the front door. Huh? Why is it locked? Arriving at a locked front door puzzled him. His mom didn't usually lock it when home. Is Mom out? He mumbled. Pushing past him, I used the spare key I had to open the door. Why do you have the house keys? Ken looked suspicious, but I didn't respond. Ken, entering before me, tilted his head as he couldn't find his mom. Stopping him from heading to the living room, I directed him. Not that way. Come this way, I said, leading Ken to another room. The door was open, and inside was a fresh portrait of his mother, Mary. What? What's going on? What is this? Holding back anger, I sighed and explained. Mary passed away while you were on your trip. The funeral is already over, I said, and Ken glared at me furiously. Don't joke, this can't be. Why should she die? It was your mother who was supposed to be. I was appalled by his disgraceful outburst, but told him calmly what happened after my mother's accident. My mom woke up after the accident. She's recovering from a fracture. My mother is still in the hospital, but thankfully, she was alive thanks to the medical team's efforts. Ken, still not understanding, asked. Then why is my mom? I struggled to say, the day your mom fell from the pedestrian bridge, she was on her way to our house. I suggested he had told her about the trip. You told your mom in advance that you were going on a trip, right? Huh? Oh, I did say that. Mary has been distrustful of you lately. She says she hasn't been able to contact you often. That's why I think she was planning on coming to see if you were really going on the trip. When I said that, Ken's eyes widened in surprise. A month ago, Mary told me that she used to hear from Ken almost every day with calls and texts, but recently, the communication had almost stopped. She'd try to call him because of urgent matters, and when he'd call back, he'd say he was busy and hang up quickly. Mary thought maybe Ken was just getting older and not clinging to his mom as much. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Ken was hiding something. That's why, driven by suspicion, she went to check if Ken really was on a company trip at the exact time I received the call about my mom's accident. It turns out that Mary had passed away carrying the souvenirs she bought with my mom on a day trip last month, probably intending to drop by under the pretext of giving us those gifts. I was so distraught that day, I couldn't think of anything but getting to the hospital as quickly as possible, and I didn't have the presence of mind to tell Mary about my mom's accident. Mary had taken the bus to the stop nearest to our apartment and must have been walking the rest from there. There's a pedestrian overpass on the way, and it seems she fell while crossing it. Witnesses say she lost her footing just before reaching the top and tumbled down. An ambulance was called immediately, but she had hit her head hard. And so, Mary was gone. After explaining all this to Ken, I glared at him fiercely.
After learning about Mary, I called you so many times.
For 2 weeks, no matter how I tried to reach him, Ken never answered his phone or returned my emails. Since there was no other relative who could arrange the funeral, I did all. I had to take on that role and managed to get through Mary's funeral while my mom was still in a critical state.
These past 2 weeks, you've been ignoring my calls and gallivanting around, right? This whole thing has shown me exactly what kind of person you are. I'm divorcing you.
When I declared that, Ken just collapsed to the floor and started bawling.
You. How can you talk about divorce right after your mom passed? And I didn't contact you because I was always with my coworkers. I didn't have the time.
He blubbered, making excuses. I was getting even angrier. Stop lying. I shouted, pulling out a piece of paper from my bag and thrusting it in front of Ken. It was a schedule for the trip I found in Ken's room.
It says here the trip was from the 12th to the 19th for 1 week. But you were gone from the 5th to the 19th.
Right before you left, you said the trip was 2 weeks.
So where were you and what were you doing for that first week? Well,
I know what you've been up to. You've been cheating, haven't you? And you spent that week with her, didn't you? I said, confident in my accusation. Ken stopped crying and started to panic. What are you talking about, cheating?
I took the rest of the week off to travel with a friend for a break.
I've been so busy at work lately. Sick of his lies, I pulled out a smartphone from my pocket. The moment Ken saw that, his face turned pale. This phone was Ken's, found in his wardrobe while he was away. There's probably another smartphone in Ken's bag. He probably had another phone in his bag to communicate with his mistress. Ken had said he couldn't contact me while he was away, but he had left his regular phone at home, so of course, he wouldn't notice any calls.
You're full of lies. You left this phone at home to spend time with your lover, didn't you?
When I placed the smartphone in front of Ken, he started shaking and banged his fist on the floor. Yeah, that's right. I've been fed up with you for a long time. I have someone else I love now, he yelled defiantly, and then, wait, how did you know where to find the phone? You didn't snoop through my room while I was gone, did you? I was appalled. I glanced at Mary's portrait, apologizing to her in my mind for this display before responding. Mary told me, I said, and Ken choked on his words. After a big fight over my mom, Ken started coming home late and going out alone on his days off, claiming to be working. When I started feeling suspicious because of his unnatural periods of unavailability, I talked to Mary about it. Mary, who also had her doubts about Ken, gave me some advice.
He's always had a habit of hiding things that don't suit him. Like a bad test score or a glass that your father cherished that he broke by accident. He used to keep these things carefully in the back of his wardrobe. If there were a bunch of towels in the back of the drawer, I would probably hide them there.
After my mother-in-law passed away, I remembered those words and searched in Ken's room, and as expected, I found a smartphone.
No way, Mom did that to you.
Ken seemed genuinely shocked to find out his beloved mother, Mary, had doubted him. Despite his dismay, I felt nothing for him and sternly told him, because of what happened, I am asking you the divorce, and I'm willing to talk to a lawyer and take this to court if necessary. Ken groaned but, realizing he had no escape, he reluctantly agreed. After we properly divided our assets, the divorce went through without a hitch. But the following month, just as I was settling into my new life, Ken called. Reluctantly, I answered, and he blurted out, Erica. Please, I need your help.
What now, Ken? What happened?
He was in trouble because his company found out about Mary's funeral. Mary had been listed as a dependent for Ken's benefits, so he was supposed to return her insurance card to the company after her passing. The company only learned of her death through this process, and it became apparent that her funeral happened while Ken was supposed to be on a company trip. His colleagues viewed him coldly, considering him an ungrateful son for not attending his own mother's funeral. Ken tried to shift the blame by saying I didn't inform him about the funeral. However, it probably wasn't a good idea to rush and tell so many people. He told different stories to different people at his workplace. It led to inconsistencies that revealed his lies. Already seen as irresponsible, his repeated lies made people doubt his character even more, leading to his isolation and eventual resignation from his job. Now without an income, Ken was living off Mary's inheritance at her house.
The neighbors found out I didn't attend the funeral, and it's awkward just walking outside. I thought about selling the house, but it's old and won't sell.
Ken is recognized by the neighbors as a bastard son, and seems to be uncomfortable even walking outside. So he made arrangements to sell my in-laws' house and move in as soon as possible, but since it's an old house, there doesn't seem to be any sign of it selling.
Erica, let's start over. Remarry me, and let's live together again.
I was disgusted when I heard those words. I realized he only reached out because he was in a tough spot, and I replied firmly. Don't be ridiculous. I want nothing to do with you, especially not a remarriage.
I beg you, if you keep this up,
I don't know you anymore. You should just live with the person you're cheating on with instead of me. When Ken refused with all his might, he began to mumble something. No, actually. I've already broken up with my partner. He continued to beg, revealing that his affair partner had left him after finding out about Mary's funeral and that he had been married all along. Ken apparently hid the fact that he was married, and was dumped by the woman he was furious with, so he is now alone. I told him coldly, you got what you deserved. I have no intention of being with someone like you. As I was about to hang up, Ken frantically said, wait. If you won't agree to remarry, I'll come to your house and talk directly. You're at your parents' place, right? I cut him off with a lie, no, I'm not there, to which he quickly asked.
Then where are you?
I'm not telling you. And by the way, I've changed jobs, so even if you wait outside my old workplace, it won't do you any good. I've told everyone to call the police if they see you around. I decided to sell my parents' house in order to distance myself from Ken as much as possible due to this incident. However, since my parents' house is quite old, it is unlikely that they will find a buyer. So, with my mother's consent, I turned it into a vacant lot and sold it. Speaking of my mother, she was finally discharged from the hospital recently, but she lost her mother-in-law, who was a dear friend, and she is feeling quite haggard. So I moved to another place where I could live quietly with my mother. As a result, I quit the company I was working for and changed jobs.
Then at least tell me where you are. I was also visiting your mother, who has been taking care of me until now.
Ken was desperately trying to find out where I was, but his words made me angry and my voice was surprisingly cold. Taking care of you? You've been complaining about my mother a lot, but don't say such convenient words now. Besides, my mother also says she doesn't want to see you again.
Hey, wait a minute, Erica!
Ken was still yelling something, but I ended the call without mercy. After hanging up, I blocked his number and later changed it. I later learned that Ken couldn't manage his savings, and he was currently in a difficult situation. Ken is struggling with debt and unable to find steady work, resorting to day jobs and part-time work. As for my mother and me, we started anew elsewhere and were free from the stress related to Ken. She had been unable to visit Mary's grave due to her hospital stay and our move. It seems like she still hasn't come to terms with the fact that Mary has passed away, and she often cries looking at photos and videos of her dear friend. I want to go see Mary soon, she says sadly, so I promised we would visit the grave soon, carefully planning to avoid running into Ken. I'm focused on supporting my mother and making the most of our lives in this new place.